Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on the new AtScale version 2020.2. I'm Carol Gunst, Marketing Director at AtScale, and I'll be the moderator today. I want you to know that all attendees are in listen-only mode. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent to everyone who registered for it a little bit later today. The on-demand version will also be published to the AtScale website and will be in our resources section. So if you have any questions as we're going along today, please type them in the Q&A section, and we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. And now let me hand it over to AtScale's Field CTO, Chris Oshiro. Chris?
Hey, thanks a lot, Carol, and thanks for the intro. I've been with AtScale for ongoing about 5 years now, so this is an exciting release. So first and foremost, to everyone who's on the line and who's going to listen to this on demand, thanks for joining us. It's been a very challenging time for us today and in the last couple of months. And in the industry, we're being forced to work from home. I'm sure most of you are listening to this from home, so I hope you're in good health and everyone's safe. So along with those challenges, along with the crisis of this era, hasn't slowed us down at AtScale. We've been focusing on making a lot of the cloud and big data analytics reliable, scalable, consistent. And one of the obvious lessons that this has taught us is the need for technological innovations, platform independence, especially as it relates to cloud and cloud adoption, and of course, security. So the 2020.2 release of AtScale is a major step forward in those areas and more. And we're going to walk through a couple of those things. So let me show you the agenda here. We're going to cover some of the release highlights with a series of slides. And when we get into the product, I'll show you some of the features actually in action. And we'll close with some thoughts on future investments and Q&A. So just for those of us who are on the line and perhaps are new to AtScale or just needs a bit of an overview, this is a view of AtScale's architecture, where AtScale here in the middle is the layer between the business intelligence tools and the underlying big data platforms and cloud platforms. So AtScale, at the end of the day, represents a data and data service in the form of a cube. We like to use the term OLAP is a very known term, but really it's around complex, multi-dimensional analytics. And within AtScale, we have the ability to provide that cube, but we have some new capabilities around the federated query engine, which I'll show you a little bit in slides and in the product today. But what we're really known for is the ability to support multiple BI tools with a single semantic definition, both absorbing SQL and MDX for tools like Excel, Power BI, Tableau, etc. And then being able to spread that out to a series of data platforms and be able to accelerate those queries. So it's all about adopting multiple and innovative cloud data platforms, but presenting the data in a way that folks are very used to seeing it in a multi-dimensional type of data service. So here's the major highlights for 2020.2. Our development themes have always been around performance, security, and agility. So the first bullet here is around acceleration of our acceleration structures, our improvements around acceleration structures. The big one here is the preferred aggregate storage. So this is a major step forward for AtScale. We've always been a leader in terms of autonomous data engineering. We are looking at query and query patterns, and then we respond to them when we create these acceleration structures that make ongoing BI workloads more performant, more scalable, etc. But with the advent of preferred aggregate storage, we now allow AtScale to dynamically decide, in fact, where to put these acceleration structures. We have always been of the mantra that you leave the data where it lies, and that's true, and that's a vision, that's an aspiration. And then the reality of the world tell us that sometimes we have to be a little bit more flexible. So we provided this concept of preferred aggregate storage, and you'll see that in action today. Additional things being done around acceleration structures, such as removal of unused structures. So we have the ability to collect a big library of these structures. How do we then cull them, remove them? We're being a little bit more aggressive as removing things that are not being used. We're continually improving our intelligence stats from different systems. So as we add new data platforms, those data platforms have their own statistics, but we pull, just higher statistics in terms of HLL++ algorithms to understand the better shape of the data, so we can be smart about the acceleration structures we indeed do create. The other big feature for AtScale this release is the horizontally scalable query engine. So AtScale has always been able to be clustered, meaning you can have multiple AtScales, so you can have failover and a load balancer sending across jobs. But as you begin to bring in more and more users, you want to be able to scale out that query service. So AtScale as a software has several services. We've now taken the query service and it effectively is becoming horizontally scalable. You'll see that with some of the slides today. Lots of improvements around security and efficiencies. So we've added Azure AD support, SAML support for Azure AD. That actually opens the door for LDAPS, which will open up things like Okta, et cetera. We see customers and prospects looking at additional identity management systems, and we want to be able to support those. In addition to that, because you have more virtualization of data, and AtScale is basically reaching out to more data platform and more users, we have to be able to also be a bit more granular about how we impact or how we set our security settings, and we want to push that down as close to the data warehouse configuration as possible. And in the past, it was a little bit at a higher level. So let me show you what we're talking about with preferred aggregate storage. Here's what we've always done. What AtScale has always been able to do is take a look at either one system or multiple systems, and we receive query and query patterns, we understand them, right? And then we start to build those aggregates back at the source system. This was always the best approach, especially in the world of Hadoop, where AtScale was born out of. Because in the Hadoop environment, there's just so much storage space. It was designed for storage space. So building aggregates on those systems was always kind of like it was always a good idea, right? As we began to, as a company, reach into additional data stores like the SQL servers and Oracle DB2, Teradata's, there was a lot more restrictions around those. So why would you want to build out an aggregate outside of the source system? Well, there's locality, there is more optimization of the data retrieval system, like for example, Postgres might be faster, there's corporate policies, etc., right? So we need to be able to be a little bit more flexible with that. The secondary use case, as we began to build out AtScale's ability to reach the different data platform, was the ability to go hybrid cloud, or on-prem cloud, right? Some kind of combination of where those data platforms may be. But when we adopted cloud platforms, we treated them very much the same, which meant that when we built these aggregates, or what we call acceleration structures, we would build them as close to the data as possible. Always still a very good idea, right? Because for privacy concerns, for data security concerns, etc. However, like I said, there's a lot of reasons why you might want to move some of these aggregates for performance or preferred locality. So what AtScale is now doing is essentially, it's identifying aggregates that we would promote to a preferred aggregate storage. And that aggregate storage can be anything. It could be a database sitting in the AtScale environment, in your AtScale environment today. You could define a new system, like in my diagram, I have a Snowflake, but it could be Postgres, it could be Oracle, it could be a source system for another cube, right? So you might have access to a Hadoop environment, an Oracle environment, Snowflake, and Postgres. For one project, you might want to point to Postgres. For another project, you might want to point to Oracle. This will all depend on who is going to be ultimately consuming your data. Where are those systems? Where are they in terms of regions? Where are they in terms of within your line of business? These things will make a difference because some things are better for performance and locality. Some things will adhere to corporate policies. The next set of slides I'm going to cover in terms of slides, really the scalable query service, right? So this is AtScale Classic with Hadoop. This is where we started. Effectively, AtScale is looking at Hadoop and it's building cubes and makes it available for end consumers. Now, if you watch Dave Mariani's webinar of the 2020.1, where he covered more of the virtualization, AtScale Classic is really now this, right? AtScale Classic can look at multiple data platforms. We generate cubes for multiple data platforms. From the end consumer, they just see data services, they consume them, they use them, etc. But we could be touching several data platforms at any one time, right? This is what it's still considered AtScale Classic, because you would have a cube on top of SQL Server. You might have a cube on top of Snowflake. Not necessarily combining those different data platforms. You can now with AtScale virtualization. You can take a look at Dave's recording for that. But the advent that we have today is actually AtScale Classic with a scalable query service. So now inside of AtScale, instead of having that one query service, that one query engine, we're going to have 5 in this diagram, where we can essentially route all these queries to different engines, allowing for higher concurrency. There's more throughput. You know, it's all much better when you have more services available. When we evaluated all the individual services inside of AtScale, we identified the query engine service to be the one that we wanted to make end scalable. This is fundamental for us as we move into bigger and broader use cases, but it's also fundamental for us as we start to reach out into SaaS solutions and more cloud native solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the product here and give you a peek into what we're doing. All right, let me go into full screen mode here. So this is the AtScale environment, and I'm starting here at the settings page, the data warehouse settings page, because I just wanted to show you the 3 environments, or 3 data warehouses rather, that I have personally set up on this AtScale environment. This environment, by the way, all running single AtScale node, talking to multiple data platforms. This is running on my laptop, right? Obviously, in an enterprise environment, you would have maybe a clustered AtScale. You would have this concept here of orchestrator, which Dave Mariani showed in his previous webinar, where now you can have a UI environment that manages the entire AtScale cluster, if you will. And you can then also, within orchestrator, you're going to be able to see all of those additional query engines as you scale out the query engines bit of it. When you have these 3 environments, typically in the past, AtScale used all 3 environments as effectively as data sources. So we would pull in data from these sources. My Postgres environment, however, happens to be a localized Postgres on my laptop. I'm only connecting to Postgres as a possible preferred aggregate storage. So let me show you where that gets configured. So you add this here. It's simple. You guys are probably very familiar with this, but if you choose to create a data warehouse, you have a series of options. What I did is I added a Postgres option. I'm going to move over here to my projects definition, and I'm going to go into my existing project, which is currently unpublished. At the project level, if you go to edit, there's an option for preferred aggregate storage, and we can select one, right? We'll do that in a second. We won't do that just yet. I'll show you what it looks like when you don't do that. So you can select any of the data warehouses you have designed in your system. So let me go into this project. Just to give you an idea of some of the things that we've been bringing into AtScale. Now let me just rearrange this a bit. Got it all over the place. Okay, so first and foremost, I'll bring your attention to the 2 different objects here, where you have a fact table that is coming from my localized Hadoop warehouse. I happen to have a dimension here that's coming from Snowflake. And in other webinars, we went a little deeper into this, so I won't, belabor the fact, but you can have multiple sources within a single AtScale cube, and that would be an AtScale virtualized environment. For today, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and focus on the preferred aggregate storage, but there's other, improvements here just to bring your attention to things like the multiple data warehouses in your data sources tab. So you effectively have access to all those platforms. There was a cool little enhancement to role-playing dimensions in the .2 release. If you're familiar with role-playing dimensions with AtScale, you're able to reuse dimensions in various forms. So you would have effectively a prefix operator. So in this example, I'm using my date dimension, but I'm using various dates in my transaction table. So I'm tagging it as my ship date, as my order. Let me just expand this a bit so you can see ship versus order. It always used to be a prefix operator. Now you can make it a suffix operator. A lot of our customers have asked us for that. So you can effectively see that change on your BI tool. It doesn't make a change necessarily in the operation of AtScale. It just makes a change on how you want to present this data. All right, so let me go ahead and publish this cube as is. Okay. So I have a Tableau workbook kind of ready to hit this data service. So we'll go ahead and refresh this table query. So this table query is just bringing back a couple measures across style and color. And this is, the project just got published. It's the first time AtScale is seeing any query. So we're taking a look at that. We're scanning the entire fact table. It's rolling up order quantity and sales amount by this color and style, both of which happen to be in the fact table itself. So this is responded to. Let's take a look at the queries. I'm going to filter this just to user for now. And it's, about 116 today. Here's the query that we've received from Tableau. And this is the outbound query. So effectively, my Hadoop environment is receiving this query. You can see the Impala dialect, and you can see that no aggregates, in fact, were used because, again, we just published this project, right? If we uncheck this, you'll see that we are also executing a couple of queries by system, right? I'm logged in right now as admin. So all of these subsequent system queries is AtScale kind of learning my query pattern, and it's doing something for it, right? It's creating some of these acceleration structures. So if I were to rerun this query now, same exact query, AtScale is receiving this query, and then effectively it's responding to it. What AtScale is doing in the background is we'll see this query, and now it's effectively really improved. So you can see here that this was a 3-second query. Now it's a 0.27 second query. So, orders of magnitude improvements, 10x. Same exact query. The difference now is that the Impala engine is now hitting an aggregate. So from the end user, they're seeing the same query, but now we have these acceleration structures being built in the background. This is all old AtScale. This is what you know and everyone loves. It proves performance, and yet it retains the definition of the data service, right? So what we'll do is we'll go back into my project and go into my edit, and we're going to enable preferred aggregate storage. So what we're going to say is, you know what? I've got this system here. It's Postgres. It's available. It's got a lot of it's got some space on it. I know it's pretty fast, right? So let me go ahead and open that up and make it available. So I'll save this, republish this project. And now what AtScale's done, and we have an aggregate already registered. It already knows that there's an aggregate within Impala, and it's ready to kind of like continue to do that work. If no one ever asked for this query again, we'd leave it on Impala, right? So AtScale is making some decisions and some ranking optimizations to figure out when to promote, when not to promote. So we'll rerun this query. We've always had the capabilities of doing some systematic ranking, if you will. So for example, if you know that you're going to reuse an aggregate many, many times over, you could do things like create a user-defined aggregate. You could use some features in AtScale now that allows you to put things into memory, etc. But what AtScale is doing right now is learning based on user behavior. And this is fundamentally the big strength of AtScale, because you don't have to do anything manually. You allow the system to kind of heuristically learn, right, what's going on. So we'll see this last query come in. This guy here, right? So looking at the system, it's querying it. It still pulls it from Impala, right? However, now AtScale is learning a couple of additional items, right? It's beginning to figure out, oh, this query, this aggregate has been called once again, right? So we would just go ahead and run this query again. You'll start to see some of the promotion in action. Now, generally speaking, you probably would have had promotion already set up and configured, right? But from an operation standpoint, from a demo perspective, I just wanted to let you see something get built, something registered to the source system like Impala as an aggregate. And then once we turned on the preferred aggregate storage, we had to touch that aggregate again. You know, normally in most systems, you would have had to set up to begin with. But here's the beauty here, right? Now AtScale has reported the data off the raw. It builds an aggregate. It continues to use that aggregate, and at a certain point it decides, let's put this up to Postgres. And because we allowed it, right? Because we actually put that in. Now, this query service now is being served up from this third location. If we go back over to AtScale and maybe just show a couple of additional queries, I'm going to click on this geography KPI, or visualization rather. This one's using all new attributions in that cube. So again, AtScale will be fetching off the raw data. You know, we'll run a query off doing a bar chart against product categories. Again, these are all attributions that is the first time AtScale seeing them, right? There's one for a simple KPI, another one for another KPI. So if we would go back to the queries page, effectively what we should see is a bunch of queries that are unoptimized. So here you go. You got a couple of unoptimized queries, some that are hitting aggregates already, which is great, right? That was probably the table report that we did previously. But AtScale is now kind of, you know, running some more unoptimized queries. This is the first time we saw it. And if we were to hit a dashboard, AtScale seeing all of these, is running all these queries for the first time. Actually, these are pulling probably from the Tableau cache. So if I change this KPI to be treated as a filter, now the dashboard is going to essentially recompile. It's sending a filter state. You're going to see the dashboard change, the order quantity changed. The queries that we're going to see here, again, some hitting ags, some not, because now we're issuing a filter for the first time across several objects, right? But if we were to now hit maybe like another style location, and this object is being used as the filter, AtScale again is learning about all this, is registering these a lot faster. And if we go back to the queries page, now you're going to start seeing more of these queries actually hitting aggregates and then not. And this is, again, AtScale very much in action. It's learning what's going on, and it's making sure that not only are we able to receive new queries and answer off data, but build some aggregates on the source system, occasionally promote aggregates to another system, and that's all in action, right? That's all kind of learned behavior. So it's really important to note that from an AtScale perspective, we just did a Dropbox, right? We just changed off the project's definition. All we did is really just added this one option. But really, when you think about it, what's happening underneath the covers is we're building these acceleration structures based on inbound query patterns. The other thing that AtScale does is we build acceleration structures or aggregates. I'll use those terms a little bit interchangeably. We build them off predictively based on the model, right? So one of the things that you might notice is that I created a geography dashboard. I also created a product hierarchy KPI. When you have hierarchies within AtScale, AtScale will look at certain things like hierarchies and predict what type of aggregate it should build. So it's building it based on query patterns, predictively on the model. There's some hints you can build within the model itself, like things like query-defined data sets. User-defined aggregates we've always supported, but now we're also allowing for the locality. Where should we store it? And this is all happening autonomously. So the AtScale brain is now able to not just fetch an acceleration structure that it thinks is the best to answer that query. Sometimes it's going to report off an aggregate and build an aggregate off said aggregate. And sometimes it's going to put that new aggregate in a new location because it knows the inbound queries are going to be much more optimized based on the locality of that placement. So by adding locality, it's effectively just exponentially grown the AtScale brain to be able to not just create aggregates, but the locality is going to improve the performance, the concurrency. Now that we've added the horizontally scalable query service, that's going to be critical for us as we increase our range in terms of aggregates built and locality built. So let me go back to the slides. And talk about some of our investments overall. Again, remember what we said before, we invest in terms of performance, in terms of security and agility. So a lot of this is thematically around those core environments. First and foremost, what you'll see today is AtScale is available on all the major cloud platform marketplaces. So it's we just want to make it much more easier to work with us, to use AtScale. We are still developing our native SaaS solution with very, very tight cloud integrations. So that, again, people can get off the ground running with us real quick. We've got some new projects. I'll just talk a little bit about it. It's coming soon, but things like simplified automatic model creation. We are going to be releasing a large model viewer of our canvas. So what you saw previously in the demonstration is the canvas kind of ERD diagram with multiple objects on the screen. A lot of our very mature customers have a lot of objects, and sometimes that can get a little bit difficult to manage. So we're providing a new large model view of the data. Much more granular controls. So we're bringing in controls to the project level, to the cube level as much as we can. We know some of our very mature customers need more and more control at the more granular cube level, so we're doing that as much as possible. There is a large couple of projects. One is our UX redesign. So you're going to be seeing some of that UX redesign coming in with the large model view, but you're also going to start seeing our canvas and our overall platform get revamped from a UI perspective and bringing in a lot of best practices around experience. The logging project is the big one. And for those of you who've been with AtScale for a long time, the logging is happening within our node, and it's one of these services like the query engine that was one service per node. We're going to be breaking this out. We're going to be breaking this out so that we can do a lot more intelligent analytics around our logging without impacting the performance of AtScale. So just separating that out is going to give us a lot of capabilities. It's going to make things much more scalable because we're going to be able to break out more services. It's really one of these first steps to very elastic, very scalable and AtScale architectures. Around security, again, more granular control at the data warehouse level. There's a new project for enhanced policy enforcement that's coming down later this year. I won't talk too much about this, but that's a big project for us. The ability to support additional type of policy restrictions within queues, but also at a data set level, so more to come there. And much more integrations in terms of our ability to bring in more data platforms. In .3, you should be seeing a big one. So we'll talk about it later, but .3 will have a real important Azure data platform that we want to bring in. We're integrating with more data catalogs, opening up our APIs a bit more. As Dave Mariani mentioned in his previous webinar, we built out the data catalog platform and feature in parts to allow a lot of connectivity from other third-party data catalogs. So a lot of additional hooks there and new BI hooks into AtScale as well. So we're working really hard with a lot of our a lot of our partners like Microsoft and Tableau, etc. So we're updating our Tableau connectivities across the board. We're updating our connectivities with Power BI. This is a big story. Hopefully you'll see a little bit of that in .3 certainly this year, but we're making a lot of admins there around desktop Power BI, but also Power BI in the cloud. So those are big investments. And lastly, as part of all technology and really around the application of technology, AtScale has been doing a lot around the COVID-19 data. We promoted a data set that we put out to the cloud publicly available. All you have to do is request some access. That's on atscale.com/COVID-19. It's a great quote from John Bronstein, Mr. Bronstein. He's the Chief Innovation Officer over at the Boston Children's Hospital. And quote, working with AtScale is now allowing us to get data into the hands of the public officials so they can actually use that data for the pandemic response. I think it's a fantastic quote. And we're really, really proud to be able to help out in this time. And overall, right, AtScale as an OLAP platform is important to various industry sectors: healthcare, financial services, insurance. We've got just a great cross-section of customers across the board using AtScale, not just for financial services, but then real important public important projects like the COVID-19 data sets. So really, really happy about 2020.2 release. We're looking forward to the .3. So I'll hand this back to Carol.
Thanks, Chris. Great job taking us through everything on 2020.2. Want to let you know we've got no questions today, so I think you were pretty thorough with everything you went through. So I want to thank everybody for their time, and thank you for joining us today, and look for this recording up on the AtScale website very soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.